Is now being held without bail on 3 charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and Diddy is now being held without bail on 3 charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prosecution.
Today, I'm announcing the unsealing of a 3-count indictment charging Sean Combs with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, interstate transportation for prostitution. The indictment alleges that between at least 2008 and the present, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. As alleged in the indictment, to carry out this conduct, Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy that used the business empire he controlled to carry out criminal activity, including sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice.
So Diddy allegedly would lure women with the promise of a romantic relationship and force them to engage in sex acts with male sex workers at parties he would call freak-offs, and Diddy would allegedly enjoy himself while watching. After the parties, the women would often be so exhausted that they would need IVs to recover. This part of this story is perhaps NC-17 rated.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics: ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB. The indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs: electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs, and they seized cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether.
So this is a remarkable story and could just be the tip of an iceberg. Jeremy Rosenthal, attorney, TexasDefenseFirm.com, is joining me on the Scott Sand Show. Jeremy, great to see you. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Scott. Always.
So let's look at the charges. Racketeering, I mean, that's something you normally use to go after the mafia.
What they've done here is they've taken a bad guy. They've taken a guy who they clearly don't like and who is engaged in certainly some degree of criminal activity, the drugs, the abuse, there's domestic violence that's alleged. There's a videotape of him punching and slugging an ex-girlfriend. They're taking that, and what they're doing is they're bootstrapping it to the entity, to the company, and basically that's what gets you the racketeering. Just being a criminal in and of itself is just being a criminal. Those charges are typically going to be state. What they've done here is they're saying, no, this is P. Diddy Combs. This is his enterprise. This is what the business is doing. Therefore, it's a mob-like organization. That's sort of the theory.
So they're using all of the RICO predicates under the umbrella to go after his organization and therefore go after his money, but also take down Diddy himself as criminal and everybody that may have been involved in the process.
That's exactly right. Also, you've got interstate commerce. Anytime that you are going from one state to the other, transporting people, in this instance, they're arguing that it's human trafficking to take a person in one state, bring them to the other state, get them high. Essentially, they've alleged kidnapping. They haven't told us in the indictment exactly what that's from or what that's for. But anytime you're going across state lines, anytime you're talking about a company that's doing business in other states or internationally, that's going to trigger federal scrutiny.
I should say I believe I have been to a Diddy party. Now I'm not exactly sure if it was run by Diddy and his organization or the parent record company, but I've been doing radio a long time, mainly in top 40 radio. And in the 90s, I went to a lot of weird parties, man. I went to parties at the Playboy Mansion. I've seen some stuff in my life. And
we need to get you some protection, some immunity.
That's the main reason I've got you on today, Jeremy, is I need to retain you for just in case anything comes out of this. But I'm pretty sure that I've been to at least one Diddy party or his record label party in LA in the late 90s. But I don't remember seeing anything that I didn't see at any other record company party in the 90s
The
either.
baby oil, that would have
No.
stood out, I'm
Uh,
sure. Maybe. No.
well, I have been to parties with baby oil. I don't know that I want to get into this at the moment, but
Sorry, I didn't mean to cross-examine you. I thought we were just going
I've
to,
been-
it's okay, but I just can't help myself. I'm a lawyer. I just got
right.
to.
One particular female band that played one of my shows, but I don't want to get into details of naming the band at this time.
Okay.
I'd like
Okay.
to plead the fifth
Well,
on the grounds what I say may incriminate me.
it's like the sweater, right? And you pull
Right.
the thread. That's what cross-exam is. You pull the thread and
Right.
pull the thread and it just doesn't stop. It's a runaway train.
Jeremy Rosenthal, attorney, TexasDefenseFirm.com. Is it unusual that nobody else was named in this indictment? Does that seem to indicate that maybe anybody else that could have been charged has already flipped on Diddy?
They did not indicate that anybody else, they didn't indicate anybody else in the indictment. They did kind of let it be known that, well, this is an active investigation and there could be more. But yes, conventional wisdom says that this is his problem and really at this point, not anybody else's. The reason why I think that is because the feds, what they like to do is they like to investigate. And then what they do is boom, they descend on everybody at once. And they love conspiracies of 5, 10, 20, 50 people. But they typically will round them all up in the same time. And in my mind, it's a little unusual that you have a sealed indictment for Combs, and then they unseal his, but nobody else's. Also, it doesn't talk about other defendants, unnamed defendants. So it didn't say that. You're probably right. Probably a lot of other folks have already flipped. They raided the house in LA. They raided the house in Miami. A lot of people, I'm not going to call them the Scott Sands of the world, who've been to Diddy parties, come out of the woodwork and they
Right.
call the FBI and say, hey, I might be in some of those videos and images, but I'm here to help. Good chance that some of that's true. But yeah, he's definitely at the epicenter of all this.
And this sounds like an investigation that's been ongoing for several years, probably.
You would think so. There was a lawsuit last fall that it had a lot of these salacious details, laid a lot of breadcrumbs out for investigators, and Diddy settled it the next day. So that tells you what Diddy thought of this. He wanted this thing done and buried, but
Right.
I think that really accelerated this. But Diddy's had problems before.
What about the bail situation? The attorney's upset that Diddy hasn't been granted any sort of bond. Is that unusual? I mean, it seems to me like perhaps with resources that Diddy has available. I mean, he's what is it, $50 billion? I think I heard his net worth, in private planes, houses around the world. Obviously, a potential flight risk, and that may have been the catalyst for the feds to arrest him before he was able to turn himself in.
These charges have what's called a presumption of detention with them. So just to kind of let everybody sort of know, because I know kind of the thug element that listens to your show, so this is
Right.
probably already news to them. But if you don't go to jail,
it's a very gangsta element listening right now.
If you don't go to jail very much, then these things are probably kind of news to you.
I'm going to have at some point. I'm going to have to explain who Diddy is
to some of your listeners.
Right.
Fair. You've got in most state courts, you have a right to bail. The theory, the reason why you go to jail when you get criminally charged, the Constitution requires that you be present for trial. We don't have trial in absentia. The Geneva Convention, other countries won't extradite unless you are present for your trial. But if criminal court were voluntary, nobody would go, right? I mean, people would be like, yeah, I got to do my laundry. I'm not going to, you tell me if I don't show up, they can't convict me. Yeah, I'm going to go do my laundry. What they do is they arrest you, they put you in a cage, you pay money to get out of the cage. That's the bond. A lot of times there are requirements. And that bond amount is set to make sure you come back. The federal courts don't necessarily work like that. The federal courts, you have a detention hearing like Diddy had. And in this offense, there is a presumption of detention because of the nature of the case. And it doesn't help that Diddy has the resources to go on the other side of the planet where he may not necessarily be found. So in the federal system, you don't always get released. You often get released, and I think you would typically get released in most instances, sometimes with an ankle monitor, sometimes with other supervision. But in this instance, the court said, no, we're not going to release you. And there was the presumption there. Diddy's going to appeal it, but I think he's going to be in prison for a while.